The greatest footballer who ever lived played his last World Cup game and got a 3 out of 10. No goals. No shots. For one afternoon, the man who spent 20 years looking superhuman looked mortal, and the internet did what the internet does now. It turned. Not on a bad player having a bad game on the best one. And here's the strange part. In 10 years, none of it will matter. This is why we tear down our greatest, and why it never sticks to Messi. The pattern that comes for every legend, the brutal truth about that final, and the reason his place in history is already sealed. Let's go. Here's a thing about greatness that nobody likes to admit. We can't leave it alone. We build our heroes as high as they'll go, and then, the moment they show a crack, we reach for the hammer. It's not new, and it's not about football. Maradona was a god in Argentina and a cheat to half the world, worshipped and vilified in the same breath, for the same career. Muhammad Ali, now remembered as an untouchable icon, was, in his own time, one of the most hated men in America. Stripped of his title, booed, condemned, we didn't canonize Ali until much later. In the moment we tore at him, that's the pattern. The bigger the hero, the harder the fall we go looking for, because a giant is a more satisfying target than an ordinary man. Psychologists have names for it, the rest of us just recognize it when we see it. And this summer, we saw it again, aimed at the most gifted player the sport has ever produced. The hate that found Messi in 2026 wasn't a verdict on Messi. It was us, doing the thing we always do to anyone who stays on top for too long. Winning for 2 decades doesn't earn you permanent love. It earns you a target. If you like football's biggest questions treated with some perspective, subscribe, it's free, and it helps the channel. Now, the final itself. Let's not do the thing his most defensive fans do and pretend the final was fine. It wasn't. Messi was, by every measure, poor. He didn't have a single shot. His expected goals for the entire 120 minutes came to essentially 0.03 of a goal. ESPN rated him 3 out of 10. Argentina around him were worse as a team. They didn't have their first attempt of any kind until the 115th minute of a World Cup final. For one afternoon, the player who had spent 20 years bending games to his will couldn't influence the biggest one at all. He looked, for the first time on this stage, genuinely mortal. And that's exactly what the pile-on needed. Because you can't tear down a legend on a day he's brilliant, the tape won't let you. You need a day like this one. A day the greatest looked ordinary, so the crack you've been waiting for finally shows. The 2026 final gave the internet permission. One bad game, after 1,000 great ones, became the peg to hang 2 decades of resentment on. That's not a coincidence. That's how it always works. The fall only lands when the hero finally slips. Step back from 90 minutes and look at the 20 years, because that's the timescale a legacy actually lives on. This tournament, the one everyone remembers for a bad final, is also the one where Messi became the all-time leading scorer in the history of the World Cup. He passed a record that had stood since 2014. He also did something no footballer, not Pelé, not Maradona, not Ronaldo, nobody has ever done. He reached 3 World Cup finals and started all 3. Golden Ball in 2014 as the best player of the tournament. The trophy and the Golden Ball in 2022, and a silver ball in 2026, at 39, as the second best player of a tournament he supposedly failed at. He has now played more World Cup matches than any human being, 34, 7 clear of his nearest rival. Sit with that. The disaster tournament still produced a scoring record, a 3rd final, and an individual medal. That's not the CV of a man whose legacy is in danger. That's a farewell that would be the crowning achievement of almost anyone else's entire career, and for Messi it's a footnote to a bad afternoon. The single game was mortal. The body of work is not. Here's what actually happened to Messi's reputation after that final, away from the comment sections. Nothing. The people who write about this sport for a living looked at the same 3 out of 10 and reached the opposite conclusion to the mob. Yahoo's verdict was blunt: the defeat does not tarnish his exceptional reputation. ESPN, even after the final, still called him the standout player of the entire tournament. And, in the same breath, the greatest male athlete they'd ever seen. Not was. Is, and the debate everyone thought this final would settle? It didn't move because a runner-up still outranks never getting there at all, and Messi's closest rival never reached a single World Cup final in 6 attempts. If anything, the tournament pushed Messi further clear. That's the great irony of the pile-on. The game that was supposed to end the argument for the doubters actually strengthened his case, because it added a scoring record and a third final to a resume that was already the best there's ever been. The internet got its bad day. History got more evidence for the defense. Now, in fairness, you can argue the other side. And some do. You can say a genuine great should have dragged Argentina to more than 2 shots in a final. You can say the very last image mattering as much as it does is unfair. But it's real. That's a legitimate take. It's just not one that survives contact with the actual record. So if the fall never sticks to the truly great, why do we keep reaching for the hammer? Because tearing down a legend says more about us than about them. When someone is that good for that long, they stop being a player and start being a mirror. People who resent winners see arrogance. People tired of the same name see a story that needs an ending. People who never liked him see, finally, a day that proves the point they always wanted to make. None of it is really about the football. It's about how uncomfortable sustained greatness makes the rest of us, and how badly, deep down, we want to be there for the fall, so we can tell ourselves the giant was ordinary all along. But here's the thing the hammer never understands. You don't get to decide a legacy in the worst 90 minutes of a 20-year career. That's decided by the whole body of work, and it's decided, in the end, by time, which has a way of forgiving the greats long after the noise dies down. We booed Ali. Now he's a saint. We'll do the same with Messi. We already are. One bad final doesn't get to be the last word on Lionel Messi. The record won't allow it, the people who study the game won't allow it, and time won't allow it. 20 years from now, the 3 out of 10 will be a piece of trivia, and the sentence that remains will be the simple one. The best there ever was. So here's the debate. Does a rough final chapter change how you rank an all-time great? Or is a legacy always the whole story, never the last page? Tell me below. Best arguments get pinned. Subscribe for football with a bit of perspective. Pitchside FC. Pick a side.